Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Andre Bing? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoy this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Andre Marcus Bing was born on May 1, 1991. In 2010, Andre started working at a Walmart retail store in Chesapeake, Virginia, which is just south of Norfolk. By 2022, he was an overnight team lead at the store. Andre's coworkers have suggested that he was hostile, aggressive, unreasonable, unstable, petty, difficult, mean, paranoid, grumpy, condescending, and a loner. They said that nobody particularly liked Andre, and everyone believed that something was wrong with him. Andre did not have good communication skills. When he was communicating, he was antagonistic and made a number of disturbing statements. On occasion, others would make fun of Andre. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On November 22, 2022, Andre purchased a 9mm pistol. He did not have a criminal record. This was a legal purchase. Andre went to work at Walmart that evening. Not long after 10 p.m., when there were about 50 people in the store, Andre was in the break room where about 15 to 20 employees on an overnight stocking team were getting ready to have a meeting. One employee said that her team leader said, "All right, guys, we have a light night ahead of us." At this point, Andre opened fire in the break room, killing 6 employees. They ranged in age from 16 to 70 years old. 4 other employees were injured but survived. After committing the murders, Andre brought an end to his own life. The police received a report of the shooting at 10:12 p.m. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts in a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. After the murders, the police found a message that Andre had left on his cell phone. The message was labeled Death Note. The police referred to it as a manifesto. After redacting a few names, they released it to the public. Here is a summary of Andre's manifesto. Much of this is paraphrased. Andre starts by apologizing to God for failing God. He said it was not God's fault, but his own. Andre failed to listen to the groans of the Holy Spirit and therefore poorly represented God. Andre suggested that he was harassed by people who were unwise and unintelligent. As they tormented him, he remained strong, but then they hacked his phone and thereby removed his dignity. Andre indicated that he was also unintelligent and unwise. He failed everyone by convincing them that he was normal. His coworkers laughed at him and called him Jeffrey Dahmer. He differentiated himself from Dahmer by saying he would never murder people who entered his home. Andre believed that his coworkers used code to communicate secretly to one another, but he was able to figure out the code. Andre realized that one particular coworker betrayed him. He felt as though betrayal was one of the worst feelings, next to regret. Andre indicated that a few months earlier, he overheard 2 coworkers having a conversation. One indicated that he had been trying to get rid of Andre from the beginning. His coworkers gave him grins which were described as evil and twisted. They mocked him as they celebrated his downfall. Andre indicated that his behavior is why they needed to suffer the same fate as him. Andre then talked about a maintenance employee with whom he connected. He could feel that she was emanating the Holy Spirit. She had apologized to Andre. He said that on her last day, she was terrified by a demonic aura after looking him in the eyes. Andre then talked about his intent. He never wanted to murder anyone. He considered himself to be one of the most loving people in the world. He was obsessed with the thought of finding a wife, but also did not believe he deserved a wife. Andre wanted people to learn from the mistake of everybody in the situation. People should not love material possessions. Rather, they should truly love God. Andre wished that he could start his life over and that his parents would have paid attention to his social deficits. He did not plan his crime. Rather, it was like he was led by Satan. Andre wished that he could have saved everyone from himself. Toward the end of his manifesto, Andre mentioned that he will spare one of his coworkers because she has a special place in his heart. Andre said his mother died from cancer. Presumably, this coworker's life had been impacted by cancer as well. Andre falsely claimed that bitter seed apricots cure cancer before asking God to forgive him for what he was going to do. Item number 2. Andre appeared to be motivated by revenge. Despite one witness who said that Andre fired indiscriminately, I think Andre had specific targets in mind for his attack. Another witness said that he appeared to be picking people out as he was shooting. During the attack, one of Andre's coworkers was pulled under a table by another worker. After looking at her face, he told her to go home. She ran out of the store. He could have easily killed her, but he chose not to. Andre considered his actions to be wrong, but also viewed his coworkers as wrong, like when he suggested that everyone in the situation had made mistakes. Prior to the attack, Andre had told people that if he was ever fired, he would retaliate and people would remember his name. It seems as though Andre wanted to keep his homicidal options open, like murder was his plan in the event that his life became too stressful. Perhaps Andre's break from reality became the stressor that pushed him too far and led him to activate the homicidal plan. Item number 3. When initially looking at the circumstances of the shooting, without considering the manifesto, vulnerable narcissism comes to mind. Here we see an employee who might be insecure and vindictive getting revenge against his coworkers. However, after examining the manifesto, vulnerable narcissism does not appear to be the best explanation for his actions. It may be a part of what was going on, but it's not the primary explanation. It appears as though Andre was psychotic. He did not seem to be connected to reality. Let's take a look at some of the evidence that supports this theory. Andre was described as aggressive and paranoid. He put black tape over the camera lens of his cell phone and believed the government was watching him. Andre referenced his phone being hacked as a major cause of his homicidal behavior. Most people would consider this a massive overreaction to having the contents of their phone exposed. He believed that his coworkers were harassing him, conspiring against him, betraying him, and speaking in code. In addition, he believed that he had figured out how to decipher this code. Andre attributed his behavior to Satan and made other religious references in his manifesto. These deviated from the norms of many organized religions. For example, Andre apologized to God for something he was getting ready to do. It was like a confession before the sin. Andre had fantastical and unsupported beliefs about how cancer is treated, and Andre was described as antagonistic, angry, and having difficulties with social interactions. No single element in Andre's history or in his manifesto indicates psychosis, but when considering them as a group, it becomes reasonable to believe that Andre suffered from delusions and may have had hallucinations. One common cause of psychosis is schizophrenia. Not everybody who is psychotic has schizophrenia, but everybody with schizophrenia has psychosis. Which brings me to item number 4. As a person is developing schizophrenia, they often have prodromal symptoms. These are non-specific symptoms that express before the first episode of psychosis. Non-specific means that they don't definitively point to any particular diagnosis. They are kind of like warning signs. They should always be taken seriously, but they don't always mean that the person with the symptoms will develop schizophrenia. Let's take a look at some of the prodromal symptoms of schizophrenia. Decreased functioning, not understanding what other people are thinking, lack of insight, not coping with stress effectively, being suspicious, having vague depressive feelings, irritability, fatigue, sleep disturbance, anxiety, and tending to isolate, being bored, having a decreased ability to concentrate, frequent daydreaming, being aggressive, disruptive, and impulsive, and exhibiting bizarre, odd, strange, and unusual behavior. As we can see, the prodromal symptoms of schizophrenia overlap with cluster A personality pathology. That is, they are similar to the symptoms we see with paranoid, schizoid, and schizotypal personality disorders. Some researchers believe that cluster A personality pathology is on a continuum with schizophrenia. Andre's behavior appears to align with many of the prodromal symptoms. He may have had a first episode of psychosis right before the shooting. Which brings me to item number 5. What do I think happened in this situation? This is just a theory, my opinion. For many years, Andre had difficulty with social interactions. He was arrogant, irritable, combative, and conflict-oriented. Despite these problems, he was able to function in his job at Walmart. As a member of an overnight crew, his social interactions were restricted to a small number of people. This job is relatively undesirable, and the positions can be hard to fill. Therefore, management was willing to tolerate Andre's angry disposition. Nobody liked him, but the company needed workers, and there was no significant reason to fire him. Over time, Andre became less connected to reality. He wasn't psychotic at this point, but he was on his way. The various conflicts that he had with his coworkers were now being viewed through a distorted lens. Instead of them simply not liking him, he viewed them as being part of a conspiracy against him. Everybody was out to get him, not just his coworkers, even the government was in on it. Andre had not established a strong social foundation in his life. He did not have anyone he could really talk to about these symptoms. He tried to deal with them through his understanding of religion, but like everything else, his perception there was distorted. He viewed himself as having fewer and fewer options. He was growing desperate. His anger was building, and he felt under threat. Even as he grew more homicidal, he was still conflicted. He recognized his behavior as wrong, but his commitment to morality was overwhelmed by his desire for revenge. The psychosis had weaponized Andre's vulnerable narcissism, anger, social disconnectedness, poor relationships, and his fears. Every negative characteristic he had was now being used against him. Eventually, Andre viewed his options as exhausted. Therefore, he selected his most radical and destructive plan. This was his failsafe. Because Andre had managed to stay out of trouble with the law, he was able to legally obtain a pistol and use it to murder innocent people. Now moving to my final thoughts. The case of Andre Bing exemplifies how the progression of psychosis is a challenge for society. Symptoms associated with the schizophrenia prodrome don't always point to an onset of the illness. Therefore, people understandably do not want to overreact if somebody is a little bit suspicious, irritable, or withdrawn. This means that once the first episode of psychosis hits, the individual is in a bad position. They do not have any of the resources to cope with the break from reality. The individual is balanced between two worlds. Their connection to reality is loose enough to fabricate a non-existent threat, but strong enough to execute a plan to eliminate that threat. Those are my thoughts on the case of Andre Bing. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.